Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, your host for the House of Hardcore podcast, Tommy Dreamer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the House of Hardcore podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Dreamer, and I'm here with someone I've known for a long, long time. He's been my enemy in front of the camera, but behind the scenes, we've been really close for a long time. Shawn Daivari, you Muhammad Hassan. No, that wasn't your name. You've had so many different names. Great Khali's handler, Kurt Angles. You've got it all. Daivari, what's going on?
Hey, Tom.
How are you?
When you said people like to, or people don't know behind the scenes, we've been buddies for such a long time. I tell everybody you're my wrestling dad. I don't think it's exclusive to me. I think anybody who came through WWE's doors between 2004 and whenever ECW started, I think all of us kind of look up to you as our pro wrestling dad.
Well, it's a proud honor to be associated with a bunch of you crazy derelicts.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
You represent your crazy father well. No, it is. I take it with a lot of honor when people call me that, because I guess when you get older, you don't appreciate how much, I don't want to say influence, but when you help people, how much people appreciate it. Or, a lot of times you don't get, I guess, the recognition. But on my 50th birthday, I got recognized a lot. So that was really, really cool.
I was thinking about this not too long ago. Right now, the people that, kind of were in the business once I got started are kind of going into the Hall of Fame. So I feel like about a generation from now, a decade from now, like you're going to be seeing a bunch of people from my gang going in the Hall of Fame. And I think, of those Hall of Fame caliber talents, a lot of them are going to gone through WWE's developmental system under your watch. And I think that's, maybe once that comes around, I think more eyeballs will open. Because everyone knows how much like Dr. Tom helped like the current crop of OVW guys, and like you came in right after that. But those guys are still up and running right now. Like all your developmental kids are like champions right now, the Drews and the Bobbies and the MVPs and stuff. But I think the wrestling industry will learn more about your children that you fathered in the industry. So in the next generation the current generation of talent starts retiring and getting out of the ring.
Yeah, we've had a few. I got Beth. I got Lita. Who else do I got?
Oh, right. All the ECW people you started too. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's talk about your journey. Stop trying to hijack my podcast here. You're not interviewing me. I'm interviewing you.
Fine.
So,
yes, Dad.
What got you hooked on this crazy thing called professional wrestling?
So when I was younger, like I was always the perfect age for professional wrestling. Like when I was 8, 9, that's kind of like when Hulkamania was in its peak. And then when I was like 13, 14, 15 is when the Attitude Era was in its peak. So I was always like the perfect age for it, but probably around second grade, I lost kind of focus of pro wrestling, and just other things were my peripheral. And in my house, we didn't have cable, and WWF did have a lot of stuff on broadcast television, like in the early 90s. But as we got into the mid 90s, later into the 90s, everything kind of moved to cable, and we just didn't have cable in our house. And I remember a WCW video game came out in 1997, whatever the first Nintendo 64 WCW video game was. And I remember renting it from like the, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, wherever, and playing it. And I remember seeing like, wait a minute, like Hulk Hogan's in WCW, he's in WWF, and like Macho Man, and like Kevin, and not Kevin Nash. I wasn't too familiar with Diesel, but I was seeing all the WWF guys in this WCW game. So that kind of piqued my interest to tune into Nitro and see what it is. And this had to be like 1997 maybe. So I was maybe 98. So like 13 or 14 years old. And then I kind of saw it as a whole different thing. Like there was no part of me that was into like the stories and the characters fighting. Like it was really cool to me. I'm like, oh man, this is this guy's job. This guy's job is he goes to work and he puts on a show for people like me to watch. And also at that time, you know, when I was 13, 14, I was in love with like Jackie Chan movies. I was in love with all kinds of Kung Fu imports and stuff. So that action fighting thing was kind of already something I really dug into. And then to see how it evolved into a pro wrestling I hadn't seen for 4 or 5 years and how much more adult it was. And I was a little bit older. It just became a whole different love for it than when I had in like, you know, the Hulkamania area when I was a kid.
It's amazing because like my generation growing up, it was the wrestling magazines that got you, and then, you know, through television. But there's a lot of people that I've interviewed too. It's video games that got them hooked onto professional wrestling, and kind of the same route that you went through. Like I played video games, saw this one wrestling game, and I was just hooked, which is pretty fascinating. And also my generation didn't have the internet. Your generation now has the internet where you could search out and see more and more stuff.
Oh man, that was another huge thing for me too, is like discovering what ECW was. And I remember this casual like friend I knew that was like also a wrestling fan. I remember asking him like, God, I wonder what like Jake the Snake Roberts is doing. Like he's not in the WCW game, and I loved him in WWF. And he goes, oh, he's in ECW now. And I was like, well, what's ECW? And he gave me the download. I was like, what, barbed wire and the ropes? Are you crazy? Like, and I remember I had like a dial-up modem, and I downloaded Terry Funk versus Sabu's barbed wire match, and it was like a bunch of 60-second clips, and I'd watch that entire match 1 minute at a time, and it took about 30 to 40 minutes to download the 1 minute. So over the course of 3 days is when I saw that Terry Funk Sabu barbed wire match, and it completely like blew my mind. Or like it's still kind of like a thing that's like burned in my memory. I don't have many memories as a kid, you know, anymore, but like I do remember like watching the thing download, just watching it go, and it's like 49 minutes remaining, 47 minutes remaining. I was just like, oh my God, to see like, no, I gotta wait for the next 30 minutes to download the next 60-second clip.
Both your parents, they weren't born here, correct?
No, they immigrated here right before the fall of Iran. I think they got here in like 1979. And like, I think it was literally like within 12 months of the Iranian Revolution.
And it's just you and your brother?
I have an older brother too. So I have my older brother's Nima, and then Arya is my younger brother who works on 205 Live, if people haven't seen him yet.
How come your older brother didn't get into wrestling? What's wrong with him?
For a shoot, he's gay. So I think maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe if he was straight, the three brothers would have been like a 6-man tag. But, you know, he found other things more interesting. Honestly, he's smarter than both of us. Me and my brother are very similar, and he's like super smart. Like it's very obvious when my mom talks about the three of us, how like our different strengths and stuff, like me and Arya's strengths, like, well, they're really good for moving furniture, you know, stuff like that. And they're like, oh yeah, Nima's an entertainment lawyer for NBC Universal. So he knows this and that. If you need to have any entertainment contract discussions, that gives you the dichotomy of the two of us.
As soon as you said his name, I totally remembered him. And then the fact that he was an attorney. I remember popping in one of our many car rides that we're doing. And I like the fact that you say that, because it's like, oh, my two sons, I think she would probably talk about Arya better because he's currently in WWE.
Yeah, definitely. I do. There's times where people have come up to me and just been like, you know, at an indie show or whatever, like, man, I love watching a 205 Live. Just go, oh, thank you. Just go along with it.
My mom like hated ECW, and like every time I come home with like white tape on my head and like, you know, beat up, and she's like, this is disgusting. This is horrible. The moment I went to WWE and like people were recognizing her son, and I had action figures, it's like she became, my friends call her Jackie Stallone, because she's like, she'll introduce herself like, hi, my son is Tommy Dreamer. I've come higher than her own being.
That's awesome.
Yeah, moms are proud. And now I'm also so old that I've wrestled you and your brother. So tell Nima if he wants a shot, I'll come after him as well.
You know what? He works for NBC Universal, and he works in their legal department. There's a good possibility he'll be working with WWE products soon enough. Like he's a part of their online division, which is, you know, now has turned into Peacock. So he might break into the wrestling business, sooner or later.
He's going to be, if he's removing content that's deemed, that's the big controversy as we're doing this, unsuitable for television.
That's my entire run.
ECW, I'm over.
Right. Both of our careers will be gone. No one will ever heard of Muhammad Hassan. No one will ever seen a drop of blood in ECW.
So you were also a very, very, I don't want to say small, but you were skinny.
I mean, I'm still small. Like I'm in shape, but I'm not last night I wrestled Seth Fatu, is the Usos' youngest brother. And even though I'm in better shape than he is, he was significantly larger than me. I can't, although the business is getting smaller, that kind of has helped me out a little bit, but I don't try and book myself to work like a average size guy. It always works in my favor if I can, psychologically put my matches together on the smaller guy. I just have so much more material.
Right. When, how'd you start, getting into pro wrestling? You went to a wrestling school and.
Yeah. So my original plan was the only wrestling school I knew of was the WCW Power Plant because they ran commercials during Nitro. So my plan was, okay, I'll graduate high school. I'll be 18. I'll move to Atlanta. I'll join the Power Plant. And then when I'm done training, I'll be on Nitro. That was kind of how I thought it all worked.
So easy.
Yeah. No brainer. I was also wondering, why doesn't WWF have a wrestling school? Maybe I want to work there. But no, from there, I had a friend from school. Through him and through some other people, they got me hooked up with Eddie Sharkey. And Eddie was kind of you got money? I was like, yeah. He said, okay, come on, train with me. He never asked how old I was, or he never asked. I don't think he cared, that I was only 16 years old at the time. But yeah, then through Eddie Sharkey, I started humping Minnesota Indies until I started doing tryouts with, WWE, where I met you.
Yep. For our listeners, Eddie Sharkey is a legendary trainer.
Unbelievably, I think he might have the best resume next to Stu Hart as far as there's a point in time where he had a champion in every territory, and that's where he got they call him the trainer of champions. That was PWI gave it to him because he had a champion in every territory at one point.
Yeah, the Road Warriors,
Bob Backlund, Rick Rude, Jesse Ventura, Austin Aries.
Yeah, he trained all those guys, that whole Minnesota. Between him and, guys who came out of Vern's camp, those were the two in that area. That was it.
Yeah. And then once Vern shut down, it was Brad Rangans and Eddie Sharkey. And then eventually they both, closed up as they got older. But yeah, it's one of those things where you think about in life how lucky you are and things happen by accident. If for whatever reason my parents immigrated from Iran to Pittsburgh or, South Dakota, wherever, just by chance they happened to go to Minnesota, it had nothing to do with me. And I just happened to be lucky enough that one of the best wrestling trainers in the world had a camp literally 15 minutes from my house.
Did he train your brother too?
No, sort of. By the time I was around, Eddie was a lot more verbal and less doing. He was in his early 60s when I started. So he was sitting in and watching on my brother's classes and training and stuff. But my brother more or less was trained by a group of different people. I would go and work with him when I was, home on the road, even because it was in Minnesota, Shelton would go and Ken Anderson would go. And then, Eric Cannon, who's one of the, best unknown independent wrestlers in the country, had a huge hand in training him. So he really got a good multifaceted training from multiple different people, which I think is why he got along a lot further than I did, much sooner than I did. I remember seeing his matches when he was 4 or 5 years in. I was like, he's way better than me when I was 4 or 5 years in.
Right. I don't remember. Was the first time I met you while we were in WWE?
Yeah. So the first time we met, I was just booked to do tryouts and extra work and stuff. And then, but I didn't get a match at that taping or that Raw and SmackDown set. And then I think I came back the second time, and that's when maybe me and you wrestled on Sunday Night Heat, maybe 6 months after that.
I remember it. And it was Jerry Briscoe who put over the flying carpet ride.
Yeah.
And then I was like, dude, we're totally doing it. And then we have our match on Heat, which I love. You love it so much. And then I remember coming in the back and John's like, what'd you think? And I was like, you should hire him. He's really, really good.
That got the ball rolling. I want to say within 6 to 9 months after that, I was in the I was signed to the developmental system.
Now, how old were you?
18 or 19. I don't remember. My first set. It's a funny story. So the first time I got in touch with WWE, Kevin Kelly calls me back, and we're just talking or whatever. And then for some reason, he said, "How old are you?" Or not? He asked how old I was. I said, "I'm 17." For some reason, I said I was 17. I didn't lie. And he's like, "Oh,
how
God.
dare you tell the truth?"
Yeah, stupid dumb kid. Come on, you're 36. And but then Kevin Kelly was like, "Oh shit, you know what? Like, I'm sorry. I thought you were over 18 or whatever. Like, when you're 8, in 6 months, 9 months, stay in touch, call back, whatever. And when you're 18, we'll get you in for some tryouts." Like, okay, cool. So then 6 months, 9 months later, I call and Dr. Tom answers. And I was like, "Oh, Tom, hi. This is the number I had for Kevin Kelly." He's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing the extra dark match stuff. Tell me about yourself, blah, 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 blah." And I wasn't 18 yet. And I was like, yeah. How old are you? 18. Okay, cool. Then I got sent to the next set of Raw and SmackDown tapings, which is the one I did at work. But then I think by the time I wrestled you, I was 18.
I got to tell you, you were on an impressive win streak for me. I won 4 matches that year, and they were all on heat and
with local jobbers.
None. The only people I beat were the locals. I couldn't beat anyone on the roster.
Hey, a win's a win, right?
Hey, they just had the first ever draft, and I'm proud to say that Moppy, Terry, and someone else who was injured for like a year were all drafted ahead of me. I was the last drafted. I was like the worst pick ever but hey, it worked out for Mike Piazza. It worked out for Tom Brady. And it worked out for Tom Dreamer, you sons of bitches.
Worked out great for me. It could be a career.
So you get sent down to OVW.
Yeah.
And you're working. When you were working, like, did you do, again, this is early 2000s. So did you just do like straight up, like, I don't want to say stereotypical foreigner, but like, did you just do like, "Hey, I hate the United States. I'm Arabic"? And
this is, you talking about before WWE?
Yeah.
So no, when I started, I consciously wanted to completely avoid that. And it wasn't a problem because like I said, I was 16, I was tiny. I really had, and also like, again, this is 1999. Every wrestler was 6'5", 300 pounds, jacked. Like every wrestler looked like Billy Gunn in 1999.
Yeah.
So like I kind of had this like Spike Dudley, Mikey Whipwreck thing going for me where they would just beat the fuck out of me. And the audience liked it. Like all they just wanted to see me do was like a crossbody for a 2 count and get beat. But if I can just get the shit kicked out of me the entire match and do one thing before I get beat, like the crowds loved me. And then it was weird. Like after 9/11 happened, I was doing the exact same act, the exact same routine, just people just didn't care. It wasn't like they could just beat the fuck out of me. And it wasn't like they were happy to see it, but
right.
no one gave a shit to see me come back. And that was, and then immediately after it, I didn't want to do the shtick because I thought it was kind of offensive and poor taste and whatever. But right around 2000, end of 02 into 03, some TV shows like The Shield and The Cell and stuff, or 24 were coming out where they had, Middle Eastern people playing the villains on the show. And I figured at that time, like, hey, if Hollywood's okay with, portraying these people as villains, maybe it's okay for me to do it too. And then I started doing the angry Middle Eastern shtick. And it worked. It's like it was the perfect time for it to work. And to this day, it's pretty much why I've ever had any exposure. That was the thing that got eyeballs on me in the first place. Like I don't think that Mikey Whipwreck type, Spike Dudley type thing was going to get me any recognition. It was just going to be another small indie guy. It's all you can do. It's the only act he can have.
Well, I mean, if you think about pro wrestling in its history, you've always had characters like they're based upon fear. And right. You look at, like I was just watching a documentary on the Von Erichs. Fritz Von Erich was a Nazi a little bit after, the war. And you have the Germans, the Russians, the sneaky Japanese after Pearl
right.
Harbor.
Right.
You have all these characters because it's literally fear of, the unknown. And so, I mean, it sucks because like in today's world, and you experience, which we'll talk about, but like a character like the Iron Sheik could not exist today.
No. And honestly, I don't think it would work, which is why I kind of stopped doing that
right.
around like 2012 or 2013 is like the people have to give it heat for it to work. But if people don't shit on it, like I remember, I want to say Was it at some point D'Lo and like Headbanger Mosh were trying to be like Middle Eastern Arabs like Tiger Ali Singh, but this was before 9/11. Like it was,
Right.
there was no reason to boo that type of person. But after 9/11 in the United States, like just walking out with the turban on my head, if no one's ever seen me before, like the heat comes with it. So you can do that character if that's your prerogative. And I specifically remember, I want to say, and this was it was a sold show at like an army base. So like you would think at an army base, people might have even more like, more of an axe to grind against like Middle Eastern people and stuff. And I wrestled Raven, and Raven did a promo, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he pretty much did like a joke, and the punchline was about me being Arab or speaking Arabic or something. And I remember it got like crickets and a couple like boos. And I was like, oh man, like maybe 2012, 2013, whenever it was, maybe that, I think it was like 2012, that maybe this is the year that people aren't going to just hate an Arab person just because. And since then, I kind of just stopped doing it, like because it doesn't work. Like it really, right. I can get way more heat on my own with the shit I do in my match than wearing a turban or speaking a foreign language.
That's also because Raven's not funny. So
I remember I got in his ass too, because I remember like he totally was like, here's the big like setup, the big setup, and here's the punchline. We got nothing on. Like, yeah, I knew he bugged him. I knew he thought he had him.
All right. So now you're in developmental, and do they give you any direction or? No.
I mean, the direction was you're going to be Muhammad Hassan's manager. And like my time in OVW was like, I want to say my total time there was like 2 weeks of actual participating. And then we went right on the house shows. Cause I want to say by September of 2004, me and Mark were doing the house shows. So we would go to the house shows Friday, Saturday, Sunday, do Raw on Monday. But because we weren't on TV, then we would also go to SmackDown on Tuesday. We'd come home Wednesday, do OVW TV on Wednesday, and then we just had Thursday off. We had to go back, pack, do laundry, and to go back out for the house shows on Friday. So like literally up until I left OVW, I think I did 4 to 8 TVs with no training at all. And then Johnny said, you can go home.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. And another thing too is there at that time, I know for a fact I would have got injured. I absolutely know for a fact how big everybody was and how small I was at the time. And unfortunately, everyone who was big and strong was also terribly green. And like, you know, they always want you to start with the smallest guys just to see if you got it. So like, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise that we got put in the house shows right away. Cause I'm pretty confident some big dude would have accidentally, you know, injured me in training.
Oh, yes. I had to wrestle half of them. And then when I was in the office, I had to deal with them.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So now you're
John Heidenreich was back down there specifically to learn to not hurt Stevie Richards. Before training, go, don't hurt Stevie. Don't hurt Stevie.
Poor dude. I seriously thought one day he killed Stevie on the electric chair.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The electric chair. He held his legs.
It was like a reverse Hurricane Rana before that was a thing. He just like it went backwards and landed on it's on YouTube. If anyone's watching this, wants to check it out. Find John Heidenreich versus any of John Heidenreich versus Stevie Richards match is a near-death experience.
Dude, he picked him up on his shoulders, goes to you're just supposed to fall backwards. That's all he does. As he does it, he pushes Stevie's legs and then holds on to him.
It was like a Road Warriors bump, but he changed his mind.
Yeah. And then after that was Chris Masters Polish hammered Stevie's face.
Oh man, it's so funny. Like I have all these different philosophies and things in wrestling. And it's funny to hit another one that there's certain experiences I've had with different people along the way that have molded me into whatever type of professional wrestler I am today. And one of them was seeing how cool Stevie was when Chris smashed his face. Like we all went to the trainer's room to check on him and stuff. And Stevie was so, I mean, obviously he was upset and his fucking face was smashing, but he was just so chill. He was like, hey, Chris, shit happens. It's not ballet. One day a green kid's going to hurt you. And I'm just, please, he's going to be freaking out because Masters was a wreck. It's his first day and he loves Stevie. And like, it was a rough thing for him. And I remember seeing that. And I was in that exact same situation in 2016 where a kid gave me Punk's finish and he just kneed me right in the fucking face. He shattered my orbital bone, my nose. I had to get emergency surgery the next day. And because of seeing you know me, like I'm quick to motherfuck somebody if they piss me off. I think in any other facet of my life, I would have yelled and screamed and cussed this kid out, you know, until I ran out of breath. But like, I just had that flashback of that moment with Stevie and Masters. And I said, you know what? Stevie was so calm and cool. And I gave him the exact same promo. He was shaking and worried. He's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I was like, hey man, it's okay. Someday a green kid's going to hurt you, and just be as nice to him as I am to you. And fucking, you know, it'll be no big deal. And like I said, that was a moment that's like burned into my mind, even though I can't remember anything. That to me is another one, is the way I treat extras. I treat every extra exactly the way you treated me. And I kind of feel like, I wonder if the first interaction I had, the guy totally jabroned me and treated me like dog shit, if I would have carried on that behavior with any local guys I meet. Like I always wonder, like, I'm so lucky to have these positive experiences that have kind of molded me into the professional wrestler I am today.
What I was going to say was also being a professional. And that's another one to look up. Chris Masters brutalizes poor Stevie's face. Stevie's nose was on the other side of his face. And I totally remember going to Masters, because like Masters was another one of my lovely children.
Yeah.
And I remember I go, dude, how do you miss a man's chest? It's a lot bigger than his head. And he was rattled up, because when you hurt somebody, it totally sucks.
Especially if you like them. You feel bad if you hurt someone you don't give a fuck about. Like, you feel terrible when you hurt someone you care about. And especially at that time, you know, it kind of meant you might lose a little money too. You feel like really bad about it.
Yep. So now you and Muhammad Hassan are off and running, and this is going to be the next big thing. And then it kind of got the brakes put on, like I've never seen brakes put on.
You think it might be one of the biggest ones in WWE, you're right?
I think it has to be. I think between that and the Billy and Chuck gay wedding was probably the two, like, we're getting way too much backlash. We got to stop. Yeah. But this is when times are now changing, and they were on the UPN network, correct?
Yeah, we were on UPN on Thursday nights. And taped on Tuesday, aired on Thursday.
They basically are like, if you have these guys on the show, we're not going to air SmackDown.
I mean, it was a little more direct than this. Is a network note. It was a network note that they're allowed to give any TV show. If HBO tells Sopranos, hey, you have to kill Tony Soprano on episode 2, you have to do it. And that was a network note from UPN, as Muhammad Hassan is not a character on that show, or, you know, Muhammad and Dwyer, we're not having them on our program. And that's why it wasn't even a discussion or like a move them here, move them there thing. It was just, we went to Vince's office and says, it's done. We can't do it anymore.
And it was because of
London bombings.
The what?
The 7/7 London bombings, July 7th.
Oh, okay.
We taped it on Tuesday, and then it was either that Wednesday morning or I think it was that Thursday morning that it aired. The London bombings happened, and we had like a terrorist angle where like Muhammad like prayed to Allah, and all these Taliban guys came out and beat up the Undertaker. Here's a good insider baseball thing for you. One of the Taliban guys, the only one that was allowed to choke Undertaker, was Val Venus. He was the only one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, the other ones were big developmental guys, and they're like, do we want a green developmental guy to wrap piano wire around our top guy's neck? And so they brought in Val Venus just for that day. Poor guy. He was planning to go home Monday night. Hey, can you come back down? We need you to murder the Undertaker.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah. So then the whole gimmick happened, and then they felt, whoever wrote the original AP article that, you know, the AP articles go out everywhere, said that it was in horrible taste that the 7/7 London bombings happened that morning, and WWE would do a terrorist angle that evening on the show without doing his due diligence to realize. And I agree with him; it is in terrible taste. But no one did the due diligence of like, you know, Raw is live, SmackDown is taped 24 hours after it, and that episode was in the can for 48 hours before the bombings happened. But you know, it's one of those things where once it's out there, it's out there. That's what happened.
Yep. And you guys were scheduled to have like a big pay-per-view match and stuff.
Yeah. So this is always what I heard, is that the next pay-per-view after the one we did was SummerSlam in Washington, D.C., which is United States capital and Batista's hometown. And I've always heard that the plan was for Mark to beat Batista in D.C. for the world title, which the way Mark was being booked, it made sense. With Vince McMahon loving people in their hometown to go under, it makes sense. With the amount of heat you would get with Muhammad winning the belt in our nation's capital, it made sense. So I've heard it, but you hear a million different things a million different times. But I definitely believe that is something that maybe was an idea they were exploring.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would.
Well, like when we first started the match with Undertaker at Great American Bash, where we got written off, the first week it was promoted as a number one contenders match, where the winner of that match got to fight Dave at SummerSlam. And then after the things got killed off, they stopped promoting it. The next 2 weeks, it wasn't promoted as a number one contenders match.
Right. And those are all the angles that come and go. And because of, like you said, shit happens. So he is literally killed, powerbombed or last ride off the stage.
Yeah.
How are you killed? Chokeslam?
Nothing. I was just, I just got thrown through a table, but like I didn't have like a definitive write-off or anything. I was kind of just an accessory to Muhammad's act.
So he's killed and literally done. He's never been seen on television ever before.
Yeah, nothing. We went home after that and they approached both of us and said, "Hey, you want to go to OVW for a week?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And, Mark said, "I'm not interested." And then Deep South opened up a couple months later and like, "Do you want to go to Deep South for a week?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And Mark said he wasn't interested. And then I think just a conversation between Mark and Johnny came to like, if I'm not going to be Muhammad Hassan, I'm not interested in coming back. And that kind of led to his exit. Wow.
He could have, especially with his body and his experience that he was gaining, he could have probably just been like, a member of the FBI or some sort of like Italian gimmick.
I don't know how he had that foresight, but now having worked as a producer on the other side of things, he was totally right. He wasn't going to be positioned by design any higher than Muhammad Hassan was booked and scheduled to be. Like he had honestly, God, like he had one of the best rookie year ones outside of Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle I can think of. Like not many people have like just rocket on him from day one for year one, but Mark didn't even make it a year. But if he beat Batista at SummerSlam, he definitely would have been, just as good a first year as Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar.
And if you think about that year, especially, they needed people like that because they were desperately trying to build new superstars. And like, I'm not talking about, hey, you could have your workers, but we need new people to draw crowds, that type, because business was down.
Absolutely. And there's no doubt in my mind there was going to be a John Cena, Muhammad Hassan face off at some point. Like that's how you do Hulk Hogan and Iron Sheik again. That had to be a trajectory that was bound to be forthcoming.
So now you're down in developmental. And
just a week in OVW and a week in, my whole time off was only 3 months. I was back by Survivor Series. At the time, it felt like an eternity. I thought my career was over, my life was over, but it was just 3 months off. And, some people have surgery. They're gone longer than that.
And now you're back with Khali.
No, I'm back with Kurt Angle because.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Kurt Angle was working with John Cena, and people at that time would not cheer. They wouldn't cheer. They would boo John Cena, and they couldn't stop cheering Kurt Angle. And I think it was Brian Gowert's idea. He suggested that. He said, "Why don't we put Daivari and Kurt together as like his private referee or personal referee? See if we can get him some heat." And it worked a little bit. And I don't think it had much to do with me, but I think it had more to do with fans. They really loved Cena and they turned against him hard, and then they started coming back, I feel. And by the time our program just kind of wrapped up because Batista got injured when he got moved to SmackDown. But it definitely served its purpose. I was glad to be back, and I was especially glad to be back in like that position working with those guys.
And where do you go from here?
So from here, me and Kurt were supposed to stay together for who knows how long, but Batista tore his tricep on SmackDown, and they needed a babyface to fill in the spot. So I don't know if this is true, but Kurt told me they asked Shawn Michaels to do it. He said no. So they sent Kurt. So Kurt went to SmackDown and he became world champion, but he was filling on that babyface hole. So the first person Kurt was working with was Mark Henry. So they said, okay, have Daivari do the swerve and let's align him with Mark Henry.
I don't remember any of this.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't?
You do. It's your life.
I mean, I remember it because like I've done interviews and you talk about it, but I'd like to share a little bit of like the background. People always wonder like, oh, how did you end up with Mark Henry? I was like, interesting enough, it started with Batista tearing his tricep. You're like, how'd you end up with this guy or that guy? And then the same thing holds true with Khali. I want to say, did Mark Henry go down with a knee injury on a Saturday night's main events? Like he tore his patella or something. And I think they needed an opponent for Undertaker at Mania. No, I'm mixing it up. I don't remember what happened, but Mark got hurt and they were because I had Khali and Mark for a second. See, now you've got me fucked up. I don't remember any of this. Eventually Khali debuted and they said, he's brown, let's put him together.
Nice.
Works every time.
And we have to say future WWE Hall of Famer, the great Khali.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited about that. I'm kind of upset it's a close set thing. I would have loved to see it.
Yeah, me too. I love
him and Nora.
They're a 3-time world champion. How many of those titles did you manage them to? You're a manager of champions.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. I didn't do any with Khali. I had the belt with Kurt, and then I didn't have it with Mark Henry. Just one with Kurt, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Potentially Muhammad in an alternate universe.
And Khali did it all by himself?
He had Ranjan Singh, the other brown guy, that thought no one would notice. Here's another funny one I heard. And again, I don't know if it's true, but people always ask how did me and Khali, we just split up for no reason, and we did. And Khali got moved to Raw in the middle of it wasn't a draft or nothing. He just showed up on Raw. And I had heard originally the Donald Trump Vince match was scheduled to be Hulk and Donald Trump versus Vince and the Great Khali. It was WrestleMania 23 back in Detroit. They just kind of wanted to do Hogan and the Giant again. And either it was Hogan's back or something didn't work out with Hogan. So it just, me and Khali got separated. Khali got moved to Raw for no reason. And then they just substituted Bobby Lashley and Umaga into that match, which also makes no sense. But it's just kind of making do with what they had when they realized Hulk wasn't available.
I did specifically remember that as well, with Hogan and Khali to recreate Andre and Hogan.
Yeah, it would have been great. And especially what a great gimmick match for, that match needs bells and whistles.
Yeah. So now you're just with Khali, and this is during WWE ECW.
Yeah. So I'm just with Khali. We did almost a year with Undertaker, and then we showed up on ECW again one day for no reason.
A lot of planning. Well, that would be, I know he was already there, but this was I don't want to say that. ECW is where wrestlers went. It should have been to rejuvenate your career, but it's you went there to die, or, hey, we're just still paying them and we'll just put them on this brand. You and I have the infamous December to Dismember match, which I've never spoken about publicly.
It's been that traumatizing.
I don't remember the name of the town, but it was the whatever town screw job.
Local town screw job.
Somewhere, I think Florida or Georgia.
Georgia sounds right, because I remember. I think it was Georgia. I don't think it was Atlanta.
Hang on.
It was one of those towns that you fly in Atlanta and then you find out you have a 3-hour drive. You're like, what the fuck? I just flew for 3 hours.
Good old Google machine. Hang on. December.
Macon, Georgia or something, or
December to Remember. That's an album, apparently. Don't want that.
What's driving distance from Atlanta? It's got to be Macon or...
Hang on. Augusta, I'll just write WWE. Here we go.
WWE worst pay-per-view ever.
Greatest with Sandman's arm sticking through the chimneys. Phenomenal. By the way, the first headline, December to Dismember, recalling WWE's all-time worst pay-per-view.
That's hard to disagree.
Where the hell was it? Hang on.
It seriously kind of felt like a 3-hour episode of Velocity.
It wasn't even 3 hours. Augusta, Georgia.
I see. Augusta is not close to Atlanta. That was one of those Ribia towns.
The Augusta screw job, as it'll be forever known for now.
For now?
Well, it's been a sore subject with me for a long time. We have our lovely matchup. ECW is a total mess. We have our matchup, and right before I go out the curtain, I get and Johnny's the producer, and Johnny goes, "What? what? He's going out now. And they changed the finish on me.
I was already in the ring. Yeah.
You're in the ring. And I literally go, what? And so we have the match and I have to tell you, and I think the referee may have told you.
Yeah, you were down the ramp when I got the word. I remember exactly. He goes, hey, we're changing the finish. I went, to what? Changing the finish could be anything. Is Sting coming down from the ceiling to Scorpion Death Drop us? What do you mean we're changing the finish?
So I go, I think I hooked you for a DDT. I had you reverse it and schoolboy me. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Now the aftermath is the best part of all of this.
My favorite part.
Now I'm livid because when they change the finish and like how it was done, Johnny's like, what? And he's just like, and Vince just looked like they're sitting in like an L position. I'm friends with Johnny, and Vince gives the order basically to whack me. And so I'm like, no problem. So we do that. We come back, but I have to still get chokeslammed by the Great Khali.
On the stage.
So I do my thing, and even the ref apologizes. He's like, dude, what's going on? What's going on? I was like, don't worry about it, because I'm in like crazy mode. So you do it from your experience, and then I'll quickly give it from my experience.
The backstage part?
Yeah.
So the backstage part is what we're supposed to do is originally it's supposed to be you in the match, and then as you go through the curtain after the heels have gone out of the way, then Great Khali comes out goozling you and chokeslams you on the stage. But now it was just kind of weird because we won the match. So we won the match. We go through, and then you come through into the gorilla position. And I don't remember the details of like what was being said, but I remember you and Vince were like yelling at each other, like blah 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 blah, and then like. But we still had to finish the bit. It was just like whatever you guys were saying. And then you go to Khali, you're like, chokeslam me. He's like, ugh. And you took his hands and you goozled yourself and you backpedaled out of the gorilla position. So now I'm at this part and he picked you up. And I tell people, everybody this day, this is the nastiest bump I've ever actually seen with my own eyeballs, where he picks you up and he gives you that double chokeslam bump on the stage. And like everything in pro wrestling gives except for the stage, like those elimination chamber grates and stuff. And I remember seeing your body like bounce, but it didn't like bounce. It was I was like, oh my God. I still to this day don't know how you survived. But yeah,
well, that's because
my favorite part was you asking Khali to hurt you. And he's going, no, man, no. He took his hands and goozled yourself and walked out.
That's because muscles tear, but fat absorbs, and I just absorbed it. So my point, I'm coming up the thing, and I'm saying this, so this makes no sense. I just got beat. So what are they going to beat me up for even more? Right? So, and I'm mad, like, how dare they change a finish on me? They only change a finish on you when they want to like friggin' job you out and just get rid of you. And I was just living. I remember coming through the curtain, and Vince, they had like a wall of producers. Like I was going to lunge at Vince. And I remember Johnny looking at me like, I don't want to have to like get involved in this, because then, I'm friends with Tommy, but Vince is I got to defend Vince, which I get it. And Johnny and I was just like, when I come in the back, I went, yo, and everyone like froze it. Like they formed this wall, like it's going to go down. I'm going to fight Vince and Gorilla. But it was such chaotic. I just tried to get to Khali because I knew I wanted to finish it. And I remember saying, come on. And he just looked at me and I yelled at him. And here's this big giant. And he like backs up all scared, like, oh, you said it. And I was like, you stupid son of a bitch, get over here. And like, but they all think I'm yelling at Vince.
Yeah.
It's just total chaos.
I don't remember what specifically you said to Khali. I remember going, no, man. You're like,
because he thinks I'm going to fight him. They think I'm going to fight Vince. And I'm pissed, but I'm just like, I'll show them. I'll take a crazy bump. So I literally grab Khali's hands, put him on my throat, get killed. Now I come in the back and they're all checking on me, and Johnny's just like, don't sell it. And I remember like I walked past Vince and they still had the whole wall of people in front of them. And I was like, in my head, I was like, this is the stupidest thing. This is not, I'm not friggin' Bret Hart in this company. Like why did they do this? Like, what the hell? So Johnny's like, listen, man, if you want to quit, it's okay. You don't even have to, I'll make sure I take care of you. And I remember my eyes start filling up with, I'm about to cry. And he's
Rage
just like, huh?
Rage tears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's also like trying to walk me down Gorilla. This one, it had steps, and he's just trying to get me out of, harm's way of like, cause he knows I'll be crazy. So, I remember then going and I called Beulah and I was just like, listen, man, I got to leave here. I can't be here anymore. And she was like, what? They changed the finish on you? And like, she knows the business. And it was just this whole moment. And I was just, I had my daughters and I was just like, I hate pro wrestling. And it's the first time in my life that I really, like I said, I hated it. And I was like, I've loved this so much. I can't hate it like this.
Yeah,
so, but I'm still going to have my say. And she was just like, hey, I support anything you do. And I was like, thank you. There's still no Impact is doing okay, but it's still not, doing much. And I remember waiting until the end of the night to get to Vince. And the pay-per-view was horrible, all this stuff. And then they're all getting ready to leave. And I positioned myself. There is no way this man is leaving before I get to him. And I have a conversation with Paul that I will not get into because that's all that I'll be a Google trend tomorrow whenever this airs, because everything I say starts to do that lately. And he just got me even angrier. And then I'll never forget, Vince is walking out of his office and he's walking out with Triple H. And I was like, I need to talk to you, Vince. Vince like, okay. And like Hunter's like, oh, okay. And they both go into the office. And I have like total rage in my head. And like, I'm like all these scenarios. I've been the entire length of the show going through every situation to like just go at it. And I go to Hunter and I go, I need to talk to him. You need to leave. And he goes, okay, man. And just walks out. And as he's walking out, Vince goes to the end of the room. And I go, what I'm about to say is nothing personal, because personally, I really, really like you. And as I closed the door, it was like a scene from Goodfellas. And I closed the door and I go, what the fuck did I ever do to deserve this? What did I ever do to deserve you changing a finish? I go, like, I mean so much, blah, 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 blah. Just please tell me, what did I do to deserve this? And he looks at me and he goes, Tommy, it was my decision. It was the wrong decision, and I apologize. And
what the fuck? I love the decision.
all my rage, everything that I had an answer for anything. And I was just like gone. Like I couldn't say anything.
Yeah, right.
And then he goes, I don't know what to do with ECW. I don't know what to do with you. And I was just like, did you think that was the answer? And then I had to go into all the stuff about Paul and how Paul was, doing things behind the scenes. And then the next day in catering, and I told him, I was like, if you don't want me to hear anymore, I'll just leave. But I have to man to man tell you this, So then the next day in catering, I'm sitting in catering, and I remember Vince hits me and he sits next to me and he goes, Paul's no longer here. And you're working with the great Khali and you're starting a program with him. And I was just like, okay, thank you. And he goes, that's it. And I go, what? And he's like, are you happy? And I go, would you be happy working a program with the great Khali? And he's like, I can never make you happy.
That's just that fucking goozle on the stage. Hey, buddy, here's just a taste of things to come.
Yeah. Then I got goozled everywhere on the floor. The worst was the steps in Virginia. Do you remember that one? I got him on chairs.
I remember we wrestled a bunch. I don't remember the bump, though.
Well, he did me on the floor. He did me on the stage, did me on chairs, through a table. I took one on the steps, on the broken steps. Dude, that was probably one of the first bumps that I ever was like, ooh, that was a good one.
Time to hang him up.
So now you and Kyle, well, that's my whole story. And I've never told it publicly, but you and I have discussed it. And it set me off on a path, man.
It probably changed things, though, for you. Like, honestly, to see where you ended up, what you ended up doing in that WWE version of ECW, maybe that was something Vince needed to see to be like, this is how we use Tommy Dreamer here.
Yeah, we they had a change in the guard. You know, there was a lot of it. Listen, it wasn't the ECW it was supposed to be, and Paul was being Paul. So that's all good, and we move forward. So moving forward, here you are, you and Khali finally. What do they do back with Khali? They move him somewhere else again.
So this is where he moved to Raw with no explanation to hopefully start the thing with Hogan.
Right.
So like with no explanation, we were in a program with you, and then Khali got moved to Raw, and I got moved to SmackDown to work with the cruiserweights.
Oh, so then you're just wrestling?
Then I just wrestled on SmackDown for about a year, and then my deal was up, and they offered me another like 3-year deal to stay. But I kind of was like, you guys aren't doing anything with me. And this is like something that's not, I don't know if it's like super common knowledge anymore. Is like they used to have those Black Fridays where like, you know, just 20 or 30 people who weren't being utilized would get let go every year. And I was like 100% sure. I'm like, I'm not going to see the 3 years of this contract if this is what you guys are doing with me. Like, there's no way I'm going to survive the next Black Friday cuts. So it was just kind of out of a conversation with that. We just decided to let my contract run up. And then I want to say by the February of 2008, I started with All Japan. And then by June of 2008, 2008, I started with TNA.
With that sweet vest you had going on there.
The Taliban vest, the flak jacket.
You were in TNA for how long? About a year?
2 years.
Anything memorable for you there?
I mean, I to this day, I tell people that was the most fun I've ever had in professional wrestling. Like when you're coming up and you're just doing indies, I always feel like that's your education. It's not really like your career. And then my first experience of like a wrestling career was WWE, which is very large, very corporate, very structured. That was my only experience of how, you know, career professional wrestling works. And then I got to TNA and saw how much more relaxed it was, how much more chill it was, how many more friends I had that were like of similar age to me. Like when I was in WWE, I was, you know, 19, 20. By the time I left, I was 23. So like a majority of the guys were at least a decade older than me.
Left WWE, they are doing drug testing.
Really?
And I go into one of the we're in Orlando, so it's one of those like portable studio things that they have, a trailer. And like this woman hands me the thing to go pee in, and I go, oh, and like there's no bathroom, so I just like start unzipping my pants right there. And she's like, what are you doing? And I go, because in WWE,
you have to watch, right?
And I was like, oh, I just thought I was supposed to fill this up right here. She goes, no, go to a bathroom and fill it up. I was like, I'm so sorry. Right.
That's funny.
So it was it was totally different. And but I remember.
Here's another thing too about TNA at that time, the 2008, 2009, into the beginning of 2010 that I was there. It was like when you're in WWE, you're just a cog in the machine. Like you're not, with the exception of a handful of people, like they can just pull that cog out of the machine, throw in a different cog, and it keeps working. You really aren't a part of the product. You just are in the product. But at TNA at that time, between 2008 and the beginning of 2010, like we would go to house shows and you could see like month after month, there was like a little bit bigger crowd, and we'd come to TV and like Dutch Mantel would give us the ratings breakdown. And it was like, oh, this week it's up, this week it's down, this week it's up, this week it's down. It's just a little by little, every week it started going up. So like, it was really cool to be a part of. There's nothing I could do that would make WWE grow and be any bigger. And not that I was a huge part of TNA's growth either, but it was just really cool to see an environment where everybody's doing their best and trying their hardest because they're seeing the fruits of their labor pay off week after week. And I got to see it all the way up till I left in like January of 2010. But like, yeah, it was just really cool to be a part of something that you could physically see growing. And then the office would give you the numbers that it's growing. And also just the people coming in. Like by the time I got there, it was like Kurt Angle was there, Booker T was there, Christian was there. Like there's a lot of, Kevin Nash was still there. it was just really cool to be a part of something that felt like, hey, I'm a part of this, not just I work here.
Well, you said it to me, and I tell this to a lot of people. When you're in WWE and they're using you, it's the greatest time of your life.
Yeah.
And then when you're not being used, it's the worst time of your life.
I can empathize with a guy like Andrade so much that, like, no matter how much money they pay you, there's a part of you that's not doing what you love. Like, if they said, hey, I'll pay you $10,000 a week to go work at McDonald's, yeah, I'll go do it. But like, there's no part of me that, like, my heart and soul aren't invested into working at McDonald's. And especially, you know, if you grow up a wrestling fan, and I think Andrade is like second or third generation, he's been in this business forever. Like, this guy is going to be a pro wrestler, whether he makes $1 a year or $1 million a year. So I can totally relate to a guy with his talent and ability and passion to just eventually reach a point where he says, I got enough money in the bank. Like, I want to do something I like to do.
Yep. And it's, you want to, like you said, you're in TNA at this point. You're not a cog, but you're being used and you have a bit of a say. It's feeling like you're worth something.
Yeah. You're involved in the product. You're not just like, it's kind of like an ant colony at WWE. Like, if every ant does their part, I have no idea what the lighting guys do. I have no idea what the camera guys do, but you're just an ant in the colony and you do your part. But at TNA, because it was such a smaller anthill, like, I could talk to the other ants and stuff. Like, I've never had anybody in WWE ask me about like my music or my Titantron or anything like that. They just said, this is your music, this is your Titantron. And I was like, I want to say, like, my second week in TNA, Kevin Sullivan came up to me and, like, sat down with me at catering. He's like, what color is your gear? We want to make you a video wall. Like, what do you think about music? And he sent me some samples. And, you know, that wasn't part of his job description. He could have just made anything, but that was just something that he felt like, right. Oh, the guy's right here. Let me go talk to him.
So now you leave there, and what do? You're bouncing around indies?
I mean, yeah, always doing indies when I can, but probably within 2 months, Adam Pearce brought me into Ring of Honor, and I started working Ring of Honor through till the beginning of 2011.
I know nothing of your Ring of Honor career.
Yeah, I had a second run. I mean, my first one wasn't really a run. Like, in 2002-3, Ring of Honor was just like a booking when I could get it. But going back this time, they had the HD net deal. So there was a lot more structure to the schedule and touring, and a lot more structure to, like, the payoffs and stuff. Like, you know, Adam can tell me, I can pay you this much for every episode of TV. Here's 2 months worth of TV. I can pay you more on house shows. Here's a schedule of the house shows. It was way more structured of a career than when I was in Ring of Honor, when it was owned by, like, RF Video.
Right. So then what? What do you do?
At 2011 or in Ring of Honor?
I don't know. Ring of Honor after Ring of Honor.
So Ring of Honor was something that was after doing, like, WWE and TNA almost for like 6 or 7 years, like, straight through. It was like big time TV wrestling. It was cool to go somewhere smaller again. And that's kind of relit this passion I had for wrestling, is being around, like, new and young guys. Like, I remember, like, I was able to get my own hotel and rental car, but I said, hey, let me ride with Cabana, Kevin Steen, and El Generico, because Cabana says they're cool. He's my buddy. I never met these guys. And, like, we've developed these, like, crazy friendships. You would think that all four of us, two in a bed, sharing a hotel room would be 1,000 times worse than me getting my own hotel room. But it really allowed me to, like, get back in touch with what was going on in the indies and what guys that are up and coming are kind of up against, or what they need to do. And I was really blown away. That was, like, my first exposure to, like, Kevin Steen, to El Generico, to Davey Richards, to Eddie Edwards. Like, that 2010 crop of HD net guys were, like, after TNA and WWE got all the Punks and Daniels and Cabanas. Like, that was, or not Cabana. Well, I mean, Cabana went too, but, like, that was the Samoa Joe's types. Like, that was their new crop we were building for this HD net run. And it was so cool to be, that's the, you know, when I went back to WWE as a producer, all the guys I was working with were majority of the people that I met in Ring of Honor in 2010.
You're also probably the youngest in all of that.
Yeah, up till about, like, 2 years ago, I was the youngest guy in every locker room. That's finally caught up.
So you go back to WWE just as a producer?
In between, I mean, I went to some stuff in Japan, indie stuff and stuff in Japan, and Lucha Underground was probably my only regular gig I had in 2015, or maybe it was 2014. But yeah, then in 2016, me and Ken Anderson started the wrestling school. And I kind of really got this, again, it was another, just like Ring of Honor was like being around young, fresh blood. It just kind of reinvigorated this passion that I'm still coasting on now for wrestling today in like 2021. If I never had that wrestling school, I don't know that I'd still be fired up about wrestling as much as I am today. But just being around young people like makes you feel like you're young in the business, and like seeing how much fun they're having and how excited they are. I have fun and I get excited again. And then through that, I was able to go to the PC, the Performance Center, and do like a guest coaching spot. A-Train brought me in for a week to do a guest coaching spot. And I thought maybe they were looking at getting me a job as a trainer. Maybe they were, but somehow the conversation from there snowballed to they were looking for more producers for the road because SmackDown was going to Fox and they wanted a set of Raw producers and a set of SmackDown producers. So they literally had to double their producer roster, and Triple H reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in doing that, which was awesome because my hopes was to get a coaching job in the PC and then work my way up to a producer gig, kind of like Kidman did or Joey Matthews did. So it kind of brought me right to the finish line.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've also always had, and me working with you, you've always had a very, very far advanced brain for the wrestling business. And you're currently a producer in Impact Wrestling and a wrestler, kind of a player coach, but you are very, very good at that spot. And yes, exactly what you said has fueled me for a long time. Like I loved hiring people. I loved being around and watching people follow their dreams and seeing their success. And if you could help people along the way, it does, because you are very, very fortunate, and as well as being fortunate at a young age. And then if you can continue to contribute, even though you don't like wrestling as much in the sense of you don't like bumping, you say?
Well, I don't like this no crowd bullshit. Like, yeah. Like last night I wrestled and it was like a limited capacity social distance audience, but they got like 60 or 70 people into a smaller venue. And it was my last match before this producer gig was December of 2018. I did a show for Spanky in California. December of 2018 was the last time I wrestled in front of a crowd. Every match I've had since then has been these empty arena things. So I haven't been able to rock a crowd to get my confidence back that I still know what I'm doing. And I finally just had that last night where like every bit of the match, and of course not the 60, 70 people is a lot, but like every single person was screaming when I wanted them to scream. They were booing when I wanted them to boo. They were concerned when I wanted them concerned. And at the 1, 2, 3, they all lost their shit. And it was like, I haven't heard that in almost 2 or 3 years because of this fucking empty arena shit. So now I completely, literally in the last 24 hours, my perspective of, do I not like wrestling anymore? Do I just not like wrestling in front of no people? Well, I know what you're talking about. I didn't enjoy wrestling at all. Like when I would show up at Impact and they say, you don't have a match today, you're just producing. I'm like, yes. But I'm starting to think maybe if there was ticketed fans in the building, I wouldn't feel that way.
Well, because you can feel the crowd. I learned that when I wrestled Rich Swann, man. I needed that next gear from the fans and it wasn't there. That's why I lost.
Time to dig deep. Nope, I ain't got it. Pin me.
A couple more things before you go. One, you another time said something very, very smart. And I use you a lot of times for references back when you used to do seminars or just when talking to people when either they're down or this. But this is an amazing perspective that you had about the wrestling industry was the WWE would be, or the business was always behind the cool products when it was the ECW. So explain to me your philosophy because I love it.
I'm kind of confused now. What are you talking about?
Maybe it was when you were inebriated.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just not catching on what you're talking about.
When ECW was around, you were like, hey, it was the cool style. And it took the WWE 4 to 5 years to pick that up.
No, absolutely.
And then when Ring of Honor was the cool product. So
absolutely. I'm with you now. Yeah. It's like the example I like to make is like, those giant, like shipping boats, those giant, like tankers, like they can't make a sharp left turn like a jet ski. If a cruise ship wants to make a left turn, like it takes a while, a lot of planning, a lot of work to change the direction. And I've noticed that by the time WWE catches on to the new underground thing, it's just a couple years down the line. And like Ring of Honor is the perfect example. That Ring of Honor crew I was talking about, that HDNet crew from 2010, all those guys are working on top in WWE now. And if you fast forward a little bit, NXT and AEW, you can't tell me that it's not like their ancestry doesn't go back to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. You watch like a PWG show from 2014 or 2015, every single participant is an NXT wrestler or an AEW wrestler. And the little things they were doing that, you know, whether it's just the haha and the gaga or the bullshit that they say, oh, it won't work on a national level. It does. It just takes a couple of years for people to get comfortable with it. It's like, there's this thing, it's called like the law of like mass diffusion or something, where you have your early adopters and then you get your general public and then you get your late adopters. And WWE 100% is at the top of it, that when something gets red hot, then they'll jump on it. But it might take a little while for something to get red hot. So I'm always looking like, I don't know what the next big boom is in wrestling. I think whatever it is, we're not seeing it yet. I don't think there's a talent out there right now that, unless there's something inside them that we haven't seen yet. Like, I think there will be a big shift in wrestling again. I just don't know what it'll be. And part of it might be variety. I think if, you know, pro wrestling can become almost like as a genre, something on Netflix where you can go to one destination and see your lucha or see your girls or see your blood and guts or see your old timers or see your tags, your singles, whatever. I think that's going to be the future of pro wrestling, way more than you need to be at your couch on this day at this time to catch this show.
Right. I think the business, I don't want to say, because I mean, think about pre-COVID, the business was insane, you know, in the sense of everybody. I probably made as much money working for myself than I did working in WWE, just because you're always working. There's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday shows, you know. Everybody, WWE was hiring people to not go to AEW, and like, even running my own little company was so hard to get talent because people were either booked or, hey, I just got signed here. Yeah. And I was just like, ugh. But I just think once we come out of this, like, I think the business can explode because people just want to go out and they want to experience wrestling again. WrestleMania will be a cool sign for it. And I know in AEW, they're just going to do their first live event. They've been working in front of fans the whole time. So I just think that'll be the next boom. Like, hey, we're at 50% capacity. Like you said, wow, it's great to see 50% of people, as opposed to, wow, this place is only 50% full, you know? You and I have shared so many great memories. Some I can't talk about, but here's one that I will. We go and do a tour of the UK for Nick Aldis, Mickie James. Your back is so bad. You cannot, when I tell you, for everyone who's listening, first of all, he's a fidgety person. I can't believe I've had him this long. If you watch this, he is moving a lot.
I'm doing
but his back is so bad.
That's annoying people.
He can only stand or sit down. And there's a lot of, stand or lay down.
Yeah.
He can't sit. And his back is so bad. He's like, at every turn, you name it. He's so messed up. In car rides, he literally has to lay on the floor, or we have to recline the seat all the way back so he's laying down. And we talk about when I say how I do know you love wrestling. So the first night, Nick is like, oh, I'll put you in there with Tommy. You'll have an easy match. I don't know how much older. I'm 50 now. How old are you?
36.
Okay, so 14 years different. This is probably about 3 years ago.
Yeah, maybe 32, 33.
I'll be like, all right, no problem. I'll take all the bumps. I'll take care of you. You literally go out there and you still move in the back. You're crippled. You're literally laying on the floor doing nothing. And you're like, okay, what are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. We go out there. You still want to take these crazy bumps. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I take great care of you. Me, the old guy, I'm bumping for him, doing all the nice stuff.
You really did take good care of me.
That the next day you're wrestling. Who are you wrestling?
I don't remember his name. He was
some really good UK guy. And we go out and we're like, man, how the hell is Sean going to get through this? How's he going to go? You start doing like you haven't missed a beat, bumping, head scissors, Frankensteiners, top rope stuff. And I'm seriously saying he is crazy. He loves this business so much. He doesn't feel anything. and you have one hell of a match. I literally could have been on television of how much you were bumping, working, and then you come in the back and you're like, oh, it was good. And you just lay on the floor for the rest of the show. Thanks.
Before I had back surgery, that kind of was like, it was kind of like a joke amongst the guys where it's like, you know, the fucking old man, like I go through the curtain and then, come on, let's fucking go. And then I come back to the curtain and always you can find me on the floor laying on a towel with my knees up crying.
And your back was so bad you needed surgery.
Yeah. And before my Arya started with WWE, he was like he really helped me out when I was having bad back days. A couple of times I had a booking and he would just take it for me because I couldn't do it. Or even just when we do tag matches, he's so good that he would just have me stand on the apron, and even when the parts where I was involved, he would have me do it from the apron, or I wouldn't even like do anything. And he would wrestle two people for, us. And then I would just come and do one thing at the end, maybe to make it look like I participated. But yeah, it was one of those, like, what else am I going to do? Like, sometimes people always talk about back surgery. Like, it's when you're a football player or under contract somewhere, you get surgery, your paycheck still comes while you're recovering. But if you have spinal fusion and you're like on an independent level, it's kind of working paycheck to paycheck, like you can't take 9 months to a year off. So you just kind of deal with it.
Oh, and you dealt with it. I remember just you sweating all the time and just in so much pain.
It was brutal.
Yet you sat and you laid on the floor. Remember the one point you laid on the floor in the front seat, like on the, where underneath, like what would be like the glove compartment. You're like, and I'm like, are you okay? Like, no, it's pretty actually comfortable. You had your feet up on the chair and your back was on the floor where your feet go. And you were like kind of crunched, and we're having full conversation the entire time.
It's like you can laugh about it now, but it's like, I think it's better now that wrestlers don't have to work hurt. Obviously, like it's much better now to be able to take time off and still get your paycheck every week while you're recovering. But those moments in my career, that one, like that couple of years, it's completely changed the way you learn to wrestle or have the ability to wrestle because of limitations. Like if the second my back started hurting, I had the luxury of not working, but still getting my paycheck every week until my back was better. I don't think I would have ever learned how to have like a no bump match, but just that situation that came up, there are some times where it just forces your hand to like, well, let me think about this. If I was going to take no bumps, how would I do it? And then it kind of forces you to do exercise and like learn more about professional wrestling and ring psychology than you can do when you're healthy, or that you need to do when you're healthy.
I know Paul would always say, if you think about when Steve Austin made his most money, it was when he was hurt, and that whole learned how to talk, and you learn. The great ones learn when they have to, and you're always one of the great ones. And I'm happy I get to see you on a more regular basis as opposed to a random 3 a.m. WhatsApp text.
Hey, when did you wrestle Arya? I never heard of this before. I don't remember this.
For Eric Cannon's company somewhere.
Was it good?
Yeah, man.
He's solid. Like the only thing I want to do in wrestling before I wrap up, like I kind of feel like my wrestling career is over, like my singles career is over. Like this is just what I like to do because pro wrestling isn't my job. Like I am a pro wrestler. So like I still do this, but like something I would love to do one day, whether it's in WWE or if Arya can come to TNA Impact or whatever, is like I've never got to tag with him on like a proper level. Like we've only tagged like shitty indie shows. Well, actually we did the Ring King thing in India. That was awesome. Like it was 2 weeks of proper television wrestling with like written angles and blow off at the end. But yeah, like it's funny to hear. I never knew you guys wrestled. If I can tag with him at some point somewhere, then I can like retire. Then I can be content.
Did you didn't you go to Saudi Arabia with WWE as a personality?
Yeah, I went with him. This is funny. Like they had a whole deal for him where the Saudi guys were going to beat up Arya because there's just some heat between Saudis and Iranians, so the thing was already booked. But he had some neck issues at the time, and he was on the injury no touch list. So that was just like a beautiful, happy accident that happened. That either he suggested my name or someone kicked around my name. So just for that one first Crown Jewel show or Super Show or something, Greatest Royal Rumble, I think, we got to go do a thing together. But it was never talked about before. It was never talked about after. It was almost like a house show spot, right. Come and do the thing. But it's funny you mentioned that. Like the thing I do have of it it's just a picture of me and him together in front of 60,000 people. Like that's the kind of shit that why I want to tag with him is like, I don't have any good stuff like that. Any photos I have of me and him together is at a butt fuck indie show in front of 50 people, like, in a shitty rain with the canvas taped together. Like it would be really cool to get some like high quality footage or video of us together. So someday when we're old or dead or whatever, you'd be like, oh, this is, me and my brother when we were 3, this is when we were 5, this is when we were 30s wrestling in for the tag team titles.
Right. Yeah, that will be cool. And you'll get it. Either you'll go back there or you'll come to Impact. Either way, that's the way the business happens. We have a great picture of me and you sharing a sundae in the UK, and I put whipped cream on your nose and we cuddled.
I have a few of those. I have too many, way too many. The grown man shit.
We've also shared a bed, and you're like, you know what? You're kind of comfortable.
You know what's funny is you're the only person that didn't complain that anytime I have to like do a bed with a wrestler, like I have such a, we can see it.
Your stubble.
Yeah, my stubble. It was like sandpaper. So then like that time I was talking about Ring of Honor when I was rooming with Sammy, me and Sammy were in a bed and he told me how much that bothered him. So that became my thing when like he would snore. I wanted more space. I'd kind of grind up against him and to sleep like, he just turn over the other way. I'm like, I got the whole bed.
I'm an old school wrestler and I've used sandpaper on my face to look like I got beat up in a parking lot. So it's always a pleasure seeing you. I'm happy this is your first ever real Zoom interview.
I've turned everybody down. There's a few.
I know. I love
wrestling people that come into your life that like, Ryan, if this person never was here, like nothing else would happen. So I can never say no to you.
Well, thank you. I'll say that next time we have to share a room. Well, this is, and you're not on social media.
No.
So he's got nothing to promote. So you won't hear from him ever again.
I'll promote the Davari Brothers tag. We get that out there down. Get that push.
Well, I love you. And thank you for doing this. And that's this week's episode of the House of Hardcore podcast. Appreciate it.